Hey, this is Meredith Elliott Powell. It is 8 a.m. Eastern Saturday morning, hanging out here with my partner, Mark Hunter. And you know what time it is. It is time for a sales logic. Mark, good week?
Good week, and we got listeners already chiming in. We haven't even started the show. How's this? So we got a great week. I know we've had a great week, but hey, the topic, something kind of different, but I'll tell you what, it drives home so many issues. Managing customer ROI expectations before they become customer complaints. We got a book, we got a lightning round, top 10 ways to increase customer retention, which fits in with that perfectly. So let's dive into this. This whole thing that customer expectations post-sale aren't delivering, aren't matching expectations. Where do we go with this?
Yeah, I think this is such an important topic because I think if as sales professionals, we really have a very honest conversation with ourselves about how much and how often we really clearly define the ROI that the customer expects and get them to agree to that ROI. I think it's kind of rare. I was looking at this topic and I found myself kind of dropping the ball a lot in this area. So I think I think this is happening more and more because budgets are under scrutiny. I mean, people have to be justifying the money that they're spending. And if you're not defining what that return on investment looks like, what do you expect to be different once you've used the product or we've signed, on the dotted line, then you're in the range of possibly having a disagreement with your client.
Huge issue. And this is because I think how salespeople measure the ROI is going to be different than how customers measure it. And this is what you've got to get on the same page right from the beginning. I see this in the tech space and I see this in the industrial space. In other words, the tech space. Oh, we got to have proof of performance, proof of concept. We got to test it out. But what happens is the customer tests it under their criteria, thinking, oh, this is what the salesperson said. This is what the sales team said. I see this in the industrial side also. Oh, we're supposed to get X number of widgets or be able to do this, and it doesn't perform. It is. And I think the fault is with salespeople because we allow false expectations not to get nipped in the bud. And I think what happens is customers begin thinking something's going to happen, and the salesperson doesn't do a good enough job really understanding how the customer is going to measure it. So it starts even before the sale is made.
Yeah, I think also you got to talk timeline. I think it's really important to talk timeline when you talk return on investment because, far too often they might expect results to happen in, 30, 60, 90 days. And you're really thinking that honestly, they're not going to expect results for, possibly a year.
Oh, that is a huge issue because especially a lot of companies are saying, hey, this is an expense. So we got to have the ROI in this fiscal year. You may be viewing it as more of a CapEx extended period of time. And again, it creates incredible divergences. But this is where I think we have to be able to do a good job as salespeople of helping the customer set up how they're going to measure ROI right from the beginning. Because the challenge many times is you get after the fact and then it's too late. The horse is out of the barn. How are you going to get it back in the barn?
Yeah, I also think that salespeople ought to see this as our competitive advantage. I mean, if I'm going in and trying to sell a product, and Mark's going in and trying to sell a product, and we're competitors, and Mark's having the conversation with that prospect about how are you going to get return on investment? Let's talk about what that's going to look like. Let's talk about the timeline. He looks so much stronger than me as a service provider. Right? So don't shy away from it. Talk about it right from the start.
Hey, I love it. And I love Kelly. Kelly is jumping in. What are the earliest operational signals you look for? The first one is timeline. What's the timeline that the customer thinks this is going to happen? And again, this comes back to a question we have to ask very early on. How have you made decisions like this in the past? How have you evaluated systems like this? How have you done this? What's been your process? And you have to be able to, as a salesperson, bring to them kind of a case study, an operational case study of how other companies have done. Don't reveal any proprietary information, but walk them through. In other words, you've got to be on the same page because if the client is developing their ROI measurements without you, you're in trouble. You are in trouble. So don't allow, and this is another operational, oh, we're going to give it to this team over here and they're going to measure the performance. That is an operational signal that it's going to go sideways, because they are going to wind up not be hesitant at all to throw you under the bus because they want to see better results.
Yeah, I love the rest of Kelly's question here. It says that ROI is starting to erode. How do you know that it's starting to erode before the customer is dissatisfied enough to actually complain? Oh, you really nailed into something there, because this is where we lose, is we didn't understand that they were starting to become dissatisfied with us, right? So number one, you need to be proactive with your check-ins with them. If you have an existing customer and you need to retain that customer, you need to be proactive in asking whether they're getting the return on investment. And Kelly, that would look something like, I would go and I would check in with Mark and I would say, hey, Mark, I'm so enjoying doing business with you. I just like to do a quarterly check-in. Here are the results that I believe we're getting. Has anything else come up? Is there anything else that you need, or any other information I can provide? The other thing, Kelly, is if you can get an audience on an annual basis with the CFO or the CEO, push for that, because far too often the person that you're working with or the person that you're selling to is not thinking about ROI. And that hammer is going to come down from the CFO or the CEO. And if you don't have a face and an understanding in front of them, but I would in today's marketplace, I would expect that ROI is eroding. I would have that attitude. And every quarter I would be looking for how to increase the ROI that I'm selling.
And depending on what you're selling, it may be much more frequently than every quarter. And who you are meeting with, this is so key, because you got to get as close as you can to the actual user of the product. Because if you're 2 or 3 levels above, it may not be a big issue to them. So they're just kind of blowing it off. The closer you get to the user, the closer you get to the street where this is actually happening at, then you're going to be able to get a better result. And this really plays out in so many ways, because one, if you want any ability to retain the customer long-term, you've got to be doing this. 2, if you want to be able to leverage referrals, you got to be doing this. 3, if you just want to become better at sales, you got to be doing this. There is absolutely no reason for you not to. And this is where sales managers, you have got to make sure that your people have got time to go back and do this, because otherwise what you're doing is you are setting up a ticking time bomb and it will go off. In fact, that perfect time is set up for the question, because the question comes to us from Jason in Little Rock. He says, I closed a deal where the customer keeps referencing an ROI number that came from their own internal projections. Not anything my team quoted. Now they're unhappy with results that are actually solid, just not what they expected. How do I reset expectations without sounding like I'm making excuses or admitting we underdelivered? So real, so critical. What are your thoughts?
Yeah. So number one is I would own this. I would go in and talk to the customer and say, here, we work quite a bit in this industry. I've got a lot of case studies working with clients like you. This is the return on investment that we typically see. However, I'd like to know and understand what return on investment is for you, what it is that you need to get from these products or services, and then let's work on a strategy to get to that point. So if I wanted to re-win this customer and not look like I'm making excuses, I would own it. The only challenge you have, and you're going to need to be honest about this, is you may not be able to deliver on the expectations that they've got. Like if I went to do a keynote and they said at the end of this keynote, we need everybody in that room to be able to close a deal, I can't deliver on that. I can deliver on, you're going to at least close 1 or 2 deals after I step off that stage. I can guarantee that. I can't guarantee you that everybody in that room will be effective. So you've got to be honest about the expectations.
And that means you've got to have a solid conversation, get everything out on the table. But I'm going to say it comes back also. This got off the rails even before the sale was made, because an old expression I've always heard, sell what's on the truck, sell what you can deliver, not sell what's coming down the road. And it's so easy. And this happens, and I see this all the time at the end of the quarter, end of the fiscal year. Salespeople begin making statements, or they don't really clarify things well enough because they want to close the deal. They gotta make this number. And so as a result, they're allowing the customer to be thinking a little bit different, and they're thinking, oh, it's okay. I'm going to get this deal. So again, it comes back to the quality of the relationship that you've had before. But I'll tell you what, Jason, you got to listen to what Meredith said right at the beginning. You've got to just sit down with them and say, hey, how did you measure ROI? What were all the expectations? Let's figure this out. You've got to own it, because if you don't own it, guess what? You are toast, and don't even think about any other opportunities from them. And guess what? They're going to probably tell others that don't do business with these people.
Yeah. They're, the thing is, Jason, look, we've all done it. So chalk it up to a learning experience. I mean, how we get better at sales, quite frankly, you learn a lot more from the deals you screw up than you ever learn from the deals that you land. But again, don't run away from this conversation and have it really early on. I mean, my comment to my clients is, I feel like it's a differentiator for me in the marketplace, is I always say, I'm big on return on investment. I realize you are giving me something really precious, and that's your time, and you could give it to somebody else. And I want to make sure you get return on investment. So help me understand what that looks like for you, so that I can put together a presentation that's going to deliver that and hopefully exceed it. So don't run away from that conversation.
And when we talk ROI, you got to have a timeline in it. And this is where Andy's comment comes in. Has your process blocked your companies from opportunities like this? This is the whole thing, that there can be so many different ways to interpret ROI, and you've got to make sure that there's clarity. But at the base of it, it is the timeline. What is the timeline? And then what it comes back to is you really got to understand something from the company. How is what you're selling fitting into the bigger picture? In other words, because everything connects to something, everything. So in other words, how does what you're selling and the ROI that you're looking to generate, how is that going to impact other things? Because again, I have seen some companies blow smoke. In other words, they're going to throw a vendor of something they bought under the bus, because really what it was a bigger decision that they really blew was wrong. So in other words, this comes back to the level of the relationship that you made. And it comes back to a kind of a basic core. You got to stop and ask yourself, the bigger the deal, the more conversations you better be having, and the more people you better be having, because this is the other thing. So many times what happens is, if this sale is controlled by one salesperson, you'd like to say, oh, everything's going to be perfect. No, it's not. Because again, if it's interfacing with 5 or 6 people or 10 people or 15 people on the customer's end, there's no way that one person can manage all those relationships. So in other words, you've got to have that team selling. So it comes really back to the whole fundamental process of how your selling process looks. But I'll tell you what, ROI, it's big, and it's going to become bigger, because I think AI is going to start measuring ROI. Ooh, that's going to be scary.
Yeah, such an important phrase. Now, Doug Lehman, welcome from Atlanta. He says, sell the intangibles, long-term value, positioning from the start. This is really sales experience and customer experience all wrapped together. They all factor in. Absolutely. The other is, don't be afraid to walk away from a deal where the customer is looking for ROI you cannot deliver. And I'll give you a great example. I do a lot of coaching and with my coaching clients. And I can't tell you how often people want me to fix an individual. And I say, and they want me to focus my efforts on fixing a sales manager and still having the team produce results. And my comment to them is always, I can fix that individual, or I can get your team results, but I cannot do both simultaneously. And you need to choose. If you need to produce results, we don't have the time to fix this individual, right? So being really clear about what can be done, because a lot of times they want you to deliver results because they don't want to make decisions or do things in their company that they know they need to do.
Oh, wow. You touched the third rail. Yeah, you really did, because again, it can be so dangerous. And this is the other piece, that sometimes ROI is just simply hard to measure. Radio advertising. If anybody in the audience has sold radio advertising, broadcast advertising, that is very hard, because really all you can do is sell time slots, and you're saying, hey, I'm going to get you 8 spots in the morning drive, 6 in the afternoon. I can't really determine the ROI. It's just not going to happen. So again, you got to make sure that what you're selling, is there an objective way that the customer can measure it? So in like radio advertising, you might be selling something else. You might be selling, hey, you know what? It's just brand impressions. It's just marketing awareness. It's just creating the image that you want in the marketplace. But ROI specific, hard to get to.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And Bryn Tillman says to identify ROI, we have to identify the impact on the business of the challenge they have and the risk of not making a change. Yeah, that is so incredibly important when you're selling to a prospect and helping them understand the urgency or the overall impact. They say that one of the biggest competitors we're losing to these days is not an actual competitor. It is the non-decision. It is the not moving forward. It is not, just letting something linger. And as a salesperson, that's your job to help them understand that if they worked with you, they would produce a result. If you don't know the ROI of your product or service, you need to back up and really understand that. If you can't clearly and cleanly articulate why working with you would make a difference, what is going to be different for that organization after having worked with you, you need to back up and really articulate that.
Now, we got to define that. Sometimes it's very hard to determine what the ROI is, because maybe what you're selling is a component that goes into something else. Maybe, and that can become very, very sticky. So in other words, this is another reason why you've got to really understand the entire process as to how your product, how your service fits in. For instance, you and I, we go in and we deliver a keynote. You're going to say, hey, we're going to help you increase sales. We're going to help you close more deals. Like you said, you can guarantee that. But the challenge is we can't control a major competitive launch that may be happening at the same time. We can't control a major outage somewhere else in the supply chain. We can't control. So you have to be careful. And again, this goes back to, okay, how do we deal with Jason in Little Rock? Jason, you got to understand the whole context, the whole scenario as to how your product, how your service fits in. And is the ROI objective? Now, that doesn't mean you're throwing anybody under the bus. No. What you're doing is you're really trying to help them evaluate. Because at the end of the day, they want to have a good evaluation, but own it all the way through.
Yeah, I love what Terry Brock is saying. He's saying, you're so right, Mark. He used to sell radio spots for my own radio program and others. Had to focus on the ROI for customers, not how cute commercials sounded on the air. Like, if I'm not going to save money, make money, save time, or get peace of mind, why would I do business with you? So again, really owning that right from the start is so incredibly important.
Which really comes back to the fact that you really have to understand, what is your product? What is your service? What's the benefit it creates for customers? And again, the longer you're in the business, the more experiences you're going to have. But that's absolutely key. Go back to some of the other things that we've talked about in the past in terms of understanding how your product or service impacts downstream. How does it impact their customers? Because again, all of these questions, we're all going to face these questions. We've all faced these questions of ROI expectations post-sale. And at the end of the day, you have got to own it yourself, period.
Yeah, I think what the other thing that is important with ROI is sometimes I work with a lot of clients who have a very long cycle before return on investment is going to be produced. Like I'm thinking about right now, like a client that we just sold software into a company, and that software, gosh, the conversion has to happen. We're actually going to go backwards before we go forwards, and managing that along the way. Number one, setting milestones with the customer so that they see mini ROI. It's not necessarily a financial return on investment or anything like that, but what it is it's a mini ROI of getting small things all along so that they feel like progress is being made. And that is your job as a salesperson, is to continue to move things forward.
That's where case studies and stories in the selling process can help you so much, because it begins to help shape expectations in the way you want them to go. Hey, time is ripping past. You ready for the book?
I am.
The Effortless Experience by our good friends Matt Dixon, Nick Toman, and Rick DeLisi.
Yeah.
Excellent book.
Yeah, the effortless experience, I think the title really says it all. I mean, it is basically how to create a experience for your customer that just is so easy. It's natural for them to not only do business with you, but continue to do business with you.
And that is so critical in today's era, where authenticity and connection is more important than ever when it comes to selling. So, right, I mean, when you create a raving fan, it's amazing at how much more business you'll be able to do for them. Okay, lightning round.
Hold up, Mark. We got one more question and two comments. I think I love that Doug Lehman is saying, "What about your ROI? Working with clients and customers beyond revenue." Doug, I think that is worthy of a podcast topic all on its own. And Kelly piped back in. She said, "I sell educational, travel, and career exploration programs to families where the return might be confidence, independence on career clarity. In markets where ROI is inherently difficult to qualify, how do you help the customer define what return actually means?"
Well, it depends on what they're looking for, because again, it may be an experience, it may be an emotional outcome, it may be, and to them, that's their ROI. That's totally okay. But you got to frame it up from the beginning. Get it set on the table to begin with. Otherwise, you're going to be in trouble. Yeah, I love it.
Kelly, I think if I were selling in your space, I mean, and I were meeting with a prospect, I mean, my first question would be, what excites you about educational, travel, and career exploration? Like, what made you get interested in this? What were you looking for? And from that, I mean, I would assume that people are looking to broaden their horizons. They're looking to have a memorable experience. Those things are return on investment. So ask that question up front and listen. If you listen, people will tell you what's of value for them. And then you sell that you reposition that and sell that in the solution. So Mark, I'm sorry, what is the lightning round?
Well, no, it's and we got another question, and we should pop that other question up there because it's good too. It really comes down to painting the picture and allow the customer to paint a picture for what they expect. Hey, Sonia's jumping in. Where in your process does a single component, a person, a system, a capability, actually change the ROI of everything else around it? It impacts a lot. This is why you've got to dive in deep to really understand how the customer operates, how the customer works. This is why you can't stay on the surface. You've really got to dig deep to understand how your product or service is going to benefit the customer. Okay, lightning round.
Can I jump in on that question?
Sure, jump in. I'm sorry.
That's okay. Sonia, I think this is really critically important. So as Mark said earlier, the people that are actually going to use the product or service are going to have one level of ROI. And even if you never talk to the CFO or the CEO, understand they have a different level of ROI. If you're working with a company that has a board of directors, it's going to be an even different ROI. And you need to know all of those and deliver on them. Okay, sorry, lightning round.
That's okay. Lightning round. Top 10 ways to increase customer retention. Go.
Oh, number one, proactively reach out and touch base with customers.
2, share the story, share the case studies, build them in right from the start in the sales process.
Yeah, if you want to increase customer retention, I'll take a stance from today's show. Show them proactively return on investment, at least on a quarterly basis.
Bring to them other solutions and ideas as to how they can do better in their business.
Make sure that they are tied to other people inside your organization, that you're not the only contact.
Yeah. Don't hesitate to refer other people to them, other companies, other services that they can benefit from.
Yeah, if you want to increase retention, sell them more products or services. The more they have with you, the stickier it will be.
Understand their marketplace, understand their competitors, understand their industry, and be prepared. And don't just be prepared, but bring them insights to help them do that.
Yeah, I would say at least on an annual basis, do an update with them. Like really sit down and figure out what's changed in their business, what other things and challenges that they're facing. So kind of re-win the business on an annual basis.
When problems arise, own it. Don't run from it. Own everything. Be the responsible person for the customer.
Yeah, I've got to say probably at number 9. I would say that
Okay.
make sure that you're tied to multiple people inside the company, because if your champion leaves, you can lose the relationship. So be tied to other people inside the company.
Be seen as the industry expert, because the more you're seen as the industry expert, the more they'll respect you and the more they'll be wanting to have conversations with you. Great conversation this morning. Great.
Yeah.
Boy, we got so many comments. So thank you so much. Hey, with that, you've been listening to Sales Logic. If you like what you hear, subscribe, rate, and review the show on your favorite podcast app. Something we said has earned you a single dollar. Consider telling a friend about our show, because it's how we grow when we help you grow. I'm Mark Hunter.
And I'm Meredith Elliott Powell.
Remember, when you sell with confidence and integrity,
all of this uncertainty suddenly becomes your competitive advantage.
And the sale becomes logical.
We'll see you right back here next week for another episode of Sales Logic. Thanks this morning. You guys were an awesome audience. We'll see you next week.